we're gonna make a pasta. We're gonna make a farfalle, which is the little bow tie, the little pasta shapes, short pasta that looks like a bow tie. And what do we need for today? Flour, I'm using 00, which is a fine flour. You can use all purpose if you like. Eggs, brown shells, white shells, makes no difference. A little bit of salt and some olive oil. That's everything that we need to make our pasta dough. So what we're gonna start with first, we're gonna take the flour. If you saw the cavatelli video, it's as similar as the cavatelli video. We're gonna make a little well in the middle, and then we're gonna crack our eggs into the center of this with a little bit of salt. So like that, a teaspoon of salt. Then we're gonna take our eggs. We want 3 whole eggs, and we're gonna use 5 yolks. So we just crack that directly into the center, the hole. And then we're gonna separate egg yolks. Well, the egg yolks is going to make a beautiful, nice shiny pasta. We're going to get like a bright yellow pasta. Some people would just use whole eggs. Some people will only use egg yolks, depending. Lots of different pasta recipes. So there we have all of our wet ingredients inside, apart from the olive oil. We're going to add just a teaspoon and a half of extra virgin olive oil. This is going to make a nice shiny pasta dough once we start to incorporate everything together. Okay, so now we have whole eggs, the olive oil, salt, flour. What we need to do, I'm going to grab a fork, and then we're going to very gently start to incorporate the wet ingredients together. So we're going to just gently start to beat the eggs, whisking up the eggs. Now what we're going to do, we need to get the flour to start incorporating in with the eggs. So we're just going to slowly start to incorporate like this, trying to keep our border up until the mixture starts to thicken a little bit. We're just doing a little bit at a time. Otherwise it's going to run just all over the table, which is no big problem either. You just scrape it up and start putting it together, you know. So pulling in from the sides. This process here is probably going to take about 5 minutes. Now I'm just going to use my plastic bench scraper just to finish incorporating the flour into these wet ingredients, like so. You can buy these from any like a grocery store, hardware store. I think I paid like $1 for it, Amazon. And then once it starts to become a bit more manageable, we can get our hands in here. I'm also just going to have a little bowl of flour, just for extra flour, if needs to be for dusting. And then now we're going to start the kneading process. And I can feel already that it's wet, it's too wet. So I'm going to be sprinkling flour over it and incorporating. We want to be using the heel of our hand, just in here, you know, pushing it down into the surface. What I'm going to also do with my bench scraper is any bits of pasta that are drying up, like we can see here on my bench, if I just scrape like this, so scraping it all off, because what's going to happen is these little dry pieces of pasta, they're going to dry out, they're going to go hard. So if we mix the dry hard pieces into our nice smooth pasta dough, if we're going to make a ravioli or a stuffed pasta, these are going to turn into sharp, hard pieces of floury pasta dough, and they're going to tear through our pasta dough. That's why we need to keep our bench clean and clear of any little dried pieces of pasta, because like I say, they're going to go hard and sharp. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to be kneading this for 10 to 15 minutes. When we make bread, we can over knead. With pasta, it's very hard to over knead. It's a little bit tacky, so I'm going to add a little bit more flour. We're looking for a nice smooth dough. It shouldn't be tacky. So using the heel of my hand, just kneading it against the table, momentarily scraping off the dry pieces of pasta, and that's it. Okay, so just finishing this off. Like I say, I've been working this for about 10-15 minutes. It's not tacky. When I say tacky, I mean sticky a little bit, you know. It's dry without being overly dry, but you can see the nice color. If I was just to have used whole eggs, it wouldn't be this color at all, you know. And then again, if I'd have just used yolks with no whole eggs, it would be even brighter yellow. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to shape it into a little ball, take some saran wrap, and then I'm just going to wrap this up, put it in the fridge. We're going to let this rest for about 30 minutes, wrapping it up nice and tight so we can make sure that it doesn't dry out in the fridge. Again, if we weren't to cover it and put it in the fridge, all the outside would dry out and we'd have sharp pasta that could make holes in our little bow ties. So now this in the fridge. And I have one that I made just before. This has been in the fridge for about 30 minutes. We rest it in the fridge because the gluten, the flour, is still working with the wet ingredients while it's resting. The gluten is still absorbing all of that moisture. It feels a little tacky, so I'm gonna just dust it with a little bit of flour. Not too much, we can add more later if we need to. And now it's going to be time to start rolling this through the pasta machine. So now we're going to start working the pasta dough, putting it through the machine. Just going to grab a couple of things. We will need a chopping board because we're going to be cutting pasta. A slightly damp rag to keep the pasta sheets from drying out afterwards. Semolina flour to stop the pasta from sticking the sheets. A little bit of regular all-purpose flour just in case this feels a little bit too tacky. A knife, and we'll talk about this little wheel after. First thing to do, we're going to cut the pasta into more manageable pieces, like this. We're going to take the damp cloth, we're going to just put it on top like that. And now we're going to start putting our pasta dough through the pasta machine. So starting with the widest setting first, a little bit of flour, we're going to start feeding the pasta dough through. This is through the thickest, the widest part. Feels a bit clammy, a bit tacky, so I'm just going to dust it with a little bit of the flour. Fold it in on itself like this, and then back through the machine. This is basically also continuing the kneading process of the dough. We're just using the machine to do it. Don't worry about overworking it. We're not going to overwork it. We want to put it through as much as possible. So fold it through again, back through the machine. And then now just directly through the machine a couple of times. Feeling a little bit tacky, a bit more flour, just rubbing it over like this. Back through the machine. And then once you've done it about 3 to 5 times through the one thickness, we're going to then take the machine down 1 notch. Everyone's machines are going to have different numbers and different settings, so there's no point me telling you really to go by a number. A little bit more flour. And then I've taken down my machine by 1 notch, and we're going to do exactly the same thing that we did before. By putting it through, folding it in half, or in a third, and then over again, and then back through the machine. If it starts to bunch up in your machine a little bit, don't worry, we can continue working it. A little bit more flour. And then for the thickness that you want to go down to, it's up to you, you're cooking for yourself. So if you like a thicker noodle, you'll leave your pasta dough a little thicker, you know. So I'm just going to keep working this through. I'm going to do the same with all of these pieces, and then once I have my pasta sheet rolled as thin as I want to go, I'm going to store them with a little semolina flour on top so that they don't stick together. So I've taken this down to 1 notch away from the thinnest that it goes. And the way we want to store this into, we want to make all our sheets first. So a little bit of semolina flour on top. Fold it gently over again, semolina flour, over again. And then we'll take another clean, slightly damp towel, and we'll just lay that on top. And then we'll do the same with all of our pasta. We'll have it laid out into sheets, ready to then make our bow ties. Okay, so now we're going to shape our bow ties. Need a chopping board, a little wheel for pasta. All of our sheets of dough are under this rag here, and we have semolina flour. I'm just going to grab a tray for the freezer, because we're going to freeze our pasta. So we have a tray here. We're going to sprinkle the semolina on the tray. This is to prevent our pasta from sticking to each other or to the tray when we freeze it. So take our first sheet. I'm going to cut it into like a manageable piece for the chopping board. So we'll cut that one in half. Cover it up again. Go in half again. And then what we need to do is we need to just trim off the outside. We'll take it down the middle. And then the outside is already flat. And then, with the fluted one, we're just going to run straight down the other way. They're not all the same size, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's homemade pasta. It's okay if it looks as if it's been made fresh. And then we just do our little folds. Someone's going to give a nice close-up so you guys can actually see, like, we fold it in half and then back in on itself, and then just pinch it. Just pinch it together. So we fold it in half, back in on itself, and we just pinch it all together. It actually looks quite nice when they're all slightly different sizes. In half, back down on itself, and then pinch together. And then these are our little pasta bow ties or farfalle. Okay, that's it everyone. I've laid it flat on the tray with some semolina flour sprinkled over the top of it. This could now go directly into the freezer for 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, you could put it in a freezer bag, Ziploc bag, and then have fresh pasta in the freezer ready to use. And you can cook it directly from frozen from the freezer. I could also cook it now directly fresh. And that's it everyone. If you do decide to make the pasta, tag me, leave a comment below. If there's anything you'd like to see maybe in the future, let me know and perhaps we'll try and make it. Happy cooking everyone, enjoy.